Good vibrations, excitations, Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm just practicing for the show I'm in, Return to the Forbidden Planet. You haven't heard of it? It's a parody of The Tempest. Yeah, Shakespeare's The Tempest. I know, parodies, usually when you think of a parody, you think of something making fun of something else, right? But Return to the Forbidden Planet, it actually isn't really making fun of The Tempest. It's kind of just having fun, the musical. It takes a lot of elements from Shakespeare, references to Shakespeare. It takes place in space. It's a rock opera. Yeah, it's a jukebox musical. Do you know what that is? It's where they take songs that already exist and implement them into the story. If you have a second, I can explain what The Tempest is, Return to the Forbidden Planet is, how they're related, and what that says about parody altogether. Oh yeah? Alright.
The Tempest by William Shakespeare. The Tempest is a play created by William Shakespeare around 1910 to 1911. There have been several meanings attributed to it. One of the meanings is that Prospero, one of the main characters, and a sorcerer, is Shakespeare himself. The power that Prospero wields is much like the power an author wields over the character's environment and story. Prospero carefully plans out who will meet and whether the interactions will be pleasant or terrible. He seems to use Ariel, an ethereal being who serves Prospero, like a pen to tell his story. Another meaning is that Prospero, Ariel, and Caliban, Prospero's other servant and native to the island, represent different parts of the brain as determined by Sigmund Freud. Now, this can't be exactly true, as Sigmund Freud didn't exist until the 1800s. But that doesn't mean people didn't have similar ideas of humans' animalistic tendencies versus their perchance for intelligent thought. Caliban is compared to the id, which is representative of more primitive earthly desires, including revenge on those they've deemed have wronged them. Prospero represents the ego, which is the desire of the id filtered through the rules of reality and society. Ariel stands in for the superego, which is considered the higher thought, morality, and spirituality. When attributing meaning to certain works of art, one must consider the time period these works take place in. The Tempest was written when colonization was taking place, which might affect why Prospero treats Caliban so poorly. There was also a couple stories of people getting lost at sea around the time the play was written, which might have inspired the premise. Return to the Forbidden Planet by Bob Carlton. Return to the Forbidden Planet is a jukebox musical created by Bob Carlton in 1985, based on a 1956 movie called The Forbidden Planet and The Tempest. The Forbidden Planet is already based on The Tempest, but the musical actually adds more of The Tempest back into the story. The musical also has references to multiple other popular media of the time. The Forbidden Planet has, at the time of the musical, become a cult classic and inspired many science fiction works like Star Wars and Star Trek, which Return to the Forbidden Planet references back to. Both the musical and the movie speak about the horrors of the mind, specifically about how monstrous mankind can be. These were both very much in reference to the Cold War, which had just started around the time of the movie and was slowly coming to a close at the time of the musical. Return to the Forbidden Planet also has a bit of a feminist lens brought about through the dynamic between Captain Tempest and the science officer Gloria. Gloria sings a whole song about how men wouldn't exist without women to give birth to them, so women deserve more respect. In The Tempest and Return to the Forbidden Planet, there are three main overlapping characters: Prospero, Miranda, and Ariel. These characters are kept relatively the same, with only minor changes in order to fit with the more science fiction theme. Prospero is now a scientist, and Ariel's a robot. These changes don't really change their role in the story that much. Now, as mentioned above, The Tempest can be read as having each character represent parts of the brain determined by Sigmund Freud. This is taken literally in Return to the Forbidden Planet, as there's a potion that, if taken, can unlock the bounds of your mind. However, this includes some monsters lurking in the id. Later it's revealed that the planet that Prospero and Miranda were living on was actually a manifestation of Prospero's superego. This kind of downplays Ariel's role in the story, and Caliban is removed entirely. However, this wasn't a choice made specifically for the musical. This is a remnant from the movie The Forbidden Planet. This is how the creator of the movie saw fit to increase the severity of the consequences of letting the id take control, and the creator of the musical seemed to agree, since he kept this aspect in. Ferdinand, Miranda's love interest in the Tempest, has been replaced by the captain of the starship Albatross, Captain Tempest. This is likely in some part because of Captain Kirk in Star Trek. Rather than having Antonio betray Prospero, his brother, like in the Tempest, Prospero's wife Gloria betrays him in Return to Forbidden Planet. This is likely to have an epic woman to include the bit about feminism. Unlike in the Tempest, there's a love triangle in Return to the Forbidden Planet, possibly to call back to some of Shakespeare's other works, like Twelfth Night. At the end of the Tempest, Prospero gives up his magic and puts his fate in the hands of the king, and what exactly happens to him is unknown, whereas in Return to Forbidden Planet, his fate is much more concrete. He dies, to save everyone from the monsters of his own creation. The ending of the Tempest very much relates back to the idea of Shakespeare standing in for Prospero, and that he's leaving his fate and the fate of his career up to the audience. Will they keep him alive by remembering him, or will they forget and let him die? The ending of Return to the Forbidden Planet very much harkens back to the meaning of that play, that it will take sacrifice to stop the fight, to stop the war, to restrict that baser nature, to restrict the violence, to prevent the nuclear attack. The Tempest seem to say that all it takes to control that part of human nature is to choose forgiveness, to choose kindness. Return to the Forbidden Planet says it takes more than that. It takes sacrifice and compromise. By making a parody of the Tempest, Return to the Forbidden Planet is taking one of its main messages and saying, yes, and.
The analysis.
Return to the Forbidden Planet is less trying to remark on the Tempest itself, but on the meaning people have put to the Tempest over the years, and the stories that have sprung from it. This makes Return to the Forbidden Planet a meta-commentary on the nature of parody and a good starting point for discussing parody itself. History is a big factor in parody. History is known to repeat itself, and so revamping a past work in a fun, comedic, and new way can retell similar stories for the present. It can reintroduce themes to a new audience. Parody can also be making fun of a source in order to criticize that work. A writer by the name of Jeffrey Cohan got together a whole book of plays meant to make fun of and criticize Shakespeare's work. It's called Shakespeare Imitation Parodies and Forgeries. These plays were made between the years 1710 and 1820. Return to the Forbidden Planet is more the first aspect of parody rather than the latter one. While the work is humorous, it's more paying an homage to both the Tempest and other Shakespearean works, such as the line, 2 beeps and not 2 beeps. It also seeks to bring back the meaning behind the work while making it more prevalent to the disasters of the times.
It's always interesting taking a look at the meaning and inspiration behind different works of art. Who knew there was so much meaning behind a fun little jukebox musical? There's a song about, loving robots better than people. On the surface, both of these works of art don't really look like much, Some people might say The Tempest is kind of boring, and some people might say, Return to the Forbidden Planet, it's a little too out there. But that's the case with a lot of parody works. You look at it and go, oh, that's just funny, that's just silly, that's a little too out there. If you actually take a closer look, you'll find that it has meaning, such as Return to the Forbidden Planet, taking the whole horrors of the mind to the extreme. I'll definitely look at parody works differently after this. Won't you? And fun fact, this analysis about parody, this is me doing a parody of one of my favorite analysis YouTubers, Jessie Gender. Go check her out if you like analysis on science fiction. I did an analysis on science fiction parodying someone who does analysis on science fiction. Don't think too hard about it.